Okay, listeners, welcome to this conversation. As you know, we do conversations with senior business and HR leaders. I have a very special guest with me today who I'm going to introduce to you in a minute. And we're going to talk in today's conversation about HR talent specifically. So the gentleman I have with me today, Mr. Vijay Rao. Vijay is, of course, an old colleague and friend. More important, he's held positions across industry, across the Tata group of companies, was also the director of TMTC. And then, with several manufacturing companies, and with GE and other companies. So point I'm trying to make is that Vijay has got very rich experience across industries. And that's one of the perspectives he brings. But from an HR talent point of view, he's also an author, and he's written a book called HR Now. So I think along with two of his co-authors, this book also talks about some of the dilemmas for HR folks and how do you actually organize HR in a way from a strategic perspective as well as from an operational perspective. So Vijay, we're going to talk about HR talent today, and thank you very much for making time, and it would be lovely to have a conversation with you.
You're most welcome.
Great. So let's launch straight in, Vijay. What are you seeing in the HR talent space? What's changing, what's not changing? Are you seeing any particular trends as we go along?
Within the HR talent space, I think what's changing it has to do with what's changing in the overall environment and context. And therefore, I think there are certain changes happening and possibly will continue to happen.
Right.
And some of them are reactive to what's happening, and some of them I think will be proactive to what the function will need to do and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So some of the changes, for example, is the adaptation of, say, technology.
Right.
Into every single aspect of the people space and things like that. The other change that one sees is the adaptation of analytics to all aspects of the HR functioning, because there is a lot of data and all of that. The third change that I see is in the roles and how some of the roles themselves might, I think, change or need to change as we go by and things like that. Therefore, the competence, capability of the HR practitioners in this revised context is something that I think will change. And I think unlike in the past, I think what's happening today is that the rate of change has become very, very rapid, even within our own profession. And therefore, the needs and the pressures on the HR professionals to adapt and actually transform themselves into slightly different creatures, or different creatures at different points of time and in different contexts is something I think that's going to be happening.
No, that's an interesting viewpoint, and I want to pick up this, the last part you talked about, that this whole adaptability of a very different kind, where you need to be different creatures at different points of time in different contexts, as you're saying it. Do you think this is this will come easily to HR folks? Because HR folks traditionally, a lot of them have been very process driven, and that has been one of the roles which they are expected to play in organizations. So how will this come about, and what do you see as challenges in this space?
Yeah, I therefore think that yes, you're right. HR folks will possibly have to turn around on their heads in a sense, and do it the other way around. Processes might morph into something which are guidelines, I think, in the future.
Right.
Apart from whatever will be technologically enabled and all of that kind of stuff to ensure a certain kind of standardization across. But then I see more and more of broad guidelines that HR professionals will have within which to work.
Right.
And therefore, their sensitivity to the context So it will no longer be that I have a process which I have to run and fit it into a particular organization. But coming from the other way around, for example, if I look at the HR business partner role, I think that role will become a very, very critical role in the new context.
Yeah.
But the way it will have to transform itself is to say that not from a process implementation role, but a completely solutioning role. And how do I use certain processes or whatever help that is there or the frameworks that are there
to
be able to do that. But therefore, it will have to come from a business first kind of a thing rather than a process first kind of an approach. And therefore, I think this, that role becomes challenging. And that is where I think the HR professionals will have a tough time. To me, I think it will have to be, for example, they will have to hold complexity. They will have to understand the fluidity of business and the way business works. They will have to be comfortable with non-standardization, if I might put it that way, that I can't apply one practice or one process to everybody in sales, for example, I must say. And they'll have to therefore find solutions for different segments of people within the sales function itself, or within different aspects of the sales function itself, and all, whether it's compensation, whether it's engagement, whether it's recruitment, whatever else, and things like that. So I think they'll have to become more creators of contextual solutions. And that is the change I think that they will have to. So in terms of, say, technology innovators, they will have to become resource gatherers or whatever, and in the context of what's this guy Howard Gardner, who talked about the synthesizing mind. I think they'll have to become more synthesizers and rather than process specialists. That's what I would, those are the kind of changes.
No, in your book HR Here and Now, Vijay, you also, you deep dived a lot into the different kinds of roles and how they will change and so on and so forth. Particularly the HR business partner role and what you spoke about now. Do you also see any new kind of roles emerging or parts of roles emerging which have not been there in HR at all, or is it only about playing the role differently?
I think it would be a bit of a mix, I think it would be some kind of extensions or some kind of newer forms of the role rather than a completely different role. If I look at, for example, the three pillars, the shared services, I think by and large it will stay as shared services, as one leg of the HR role. Employees will also possibly stay as one leg of the HR function and role. And business partners will be business partners. But the way it will be transformed, I think shared services will transform themselves into not somebody who delivers a process consistently alone, but who would possibly be predictors of certain things based on the data that they have at the back end. And the knowledge that they have at the back end. So they could actually be predictors. I think COEs will also have a lot of huge data at the back end, and they could be talking about proactively doing things in a certain way, given the data that they may either get from the shared services on their own data, to actually create strategies for recruitment, for compensation, for where to go, for what, for engagement, for the whole works actually, and all of that. So I think a little bit of that will happen. The newer, people have spoken about, say, technology adaptation. Would it be a newer role, or would it be an understanding of the role of the context and technology and creating solutions? Similarly, analytics, or similarly, whether it's in marketing or brand building or creating, EVA or any one of those kind of things. I'm not so sure whether they are completely different roles.
No, right, right.
There could be roles which are more nuanced in one way or the other.
Right, right.
But I don't honestly see too many of that. If you look at, again, what we spoke in our book
Yeah.
about the thinking, doing, feeling aspect of the HR roles,
Right.
I think all three will again stay.
Stay.
But how they manifest themselves in terms of behavior and whether an HR BP, for example, will probably be doing significantly more in the area of all thinking, doing, and possibly feeling.
Right. Right.
Whereas a specialist will be doing more of thinking, I guess, in their respective areas and things like that, and stuff like that. But again, that three-legged stool of thinking, doing, feeling will remain.
Will remain, yeah.
And it might again get expressed more. For example, you could somebody might be focusing on pure counseling,
right,
as part of the HR team or external. But I think one of the newer attributes that HR people might would have is this whole business about sourcing the right expertise from wherever it's available globally.
Correct.
Because they will not have it, I don't think they'll have it in-house. Managing these vendors, for want of a better word.
Right.
And also the awareness to the cultural nuances from where and where they apply, both, because both could be global in a sense. If I source something from Australia, but I want to apply it in Africa,
correct,
I would still need to understand both cultures and all that. So that little, I think that knowledge of where and how do I hold this, whole piece together. If I have 20 vendors, how do I still kind of hold them all together to a certain way of mind? And if you again, talking from our book, we also said the nature of relationships will change with everyone. Whether they will be permanent, gig workers, contractual, part-time, whatever else. And therefore, the HR guys will have to be sensitive to that nature of relationships.
Right.
Not only to the nature of relationship, but to but also to what that could mean for, say, capability building in the organization. Or the depth of talent that could be available in the organization, or the level of attrition that could happen amongst these workmen who are not on the company roles, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think while COEs will become more deep, more in terms of technology adaptation and their own speciality, I think at the business partner it will be more breadth and and the ability to hold different things and still find a way of going forward and all of that kind of stuff.
Right. I will Vijay come back to the point about complexity you made, because talking to other people, there are a few other things which are coming up, and I'll come back to that. But you talked about capability and or HR capability, and do you see that different industries will require anything different in terms of HR capability? The percentages of capability, of course, could be different, if I may put it this way. But are you also seeing fundamental differences between industries, if anything?
Again, I don't see a huge fundamental difference. I think the difference could be in the approach, in the, the context and the skills that might be required, and maybe a certain amount of knowledge. If you're looking at negotiating skills or, in a unionized environment, for example, I find a lot of today, for example, HR people who are not used to the notion of, say, unions and workmen don't even want to work with workmen. They feel that workmen means something different or whatever, or they have to be antagonistic or whatever. So that's a attitude and a skill, I think, issue. Not necessarily a greatly, a different set of. So I think there is fungibility.
Right.
But I think you've got to be, first of all, willing to understand what it means and to adapt yourself to the requirements of that particular role.
Right. Yeah. So that goes back to your context piece, actually, where you're saying that, if you are in a way, both mindset wise and skill wise, willing to adapt to context, then there is fungibility of skills, obviously with some changes here and there. That's
so, So the mindset, I think, is one of the greatest requirement, mindset and complexity, what you just spoke about, ability to kind of put to, and then would be the skill in terms of engagement or in, knowledge or in creating whatever you want to create and stuff.
Right. So, when we speak about complexity, Vijay, one of the elements, a lot of people have been talking about, and not just for HR talent, but also for other places, is the ability to build patterns. That how do you recognize patterns? And, you talked about predictability earlier, and, almost many roles wanting to not be sort of, let's say reactive, but proactive. So where, how do you see that, or have you seen examples of that? And is there more light you can throw on that aspect?
I was just reading this interesting book by Robert Keegan, I think, on, and he talks about levels of complexity. And you know that in the Tata Group, we also worked with a little bit about this levels of complexity and all that. And I think that's a reality, that the nature of the world is becoming so complex. And I was reading all these books by this Noel, what's his name, on not humankind, Homo Deus and all of that kind of stuff.
Sapiens and
Sapiens, Homo Deus and all of that. So the world is, I think, definitely getting more and more complex. And we are not going to be exempted from, looking at, so we can't say that we have simple solutions to complex issues. They will require complex solutions, I think, I think people in the IT sector have, in all sectors, I think, but the most innovation, I think, and the greatest possible advances in thinking maybe have come from in the IT sector, within HR I'm talking about. Whereas even in the manufacturing sector, they've looked at different tactical things, factories within factories and outsourcing and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know whether too many fundamental changes have happened in that sector. So I don't know of too many examples in that sector. But I think that's something that we will need to deal with, definitely.
Right. So slightly different question, Vijay, and not necessarily directly related to the book and some of the things you've talked about, but traditionally when you go to sort of colleges and this thing, HR has not been a preferred career for a lot of people. It's been more like, I'd rather do a marketing job or something else, and then incidentally, HR is almost like a last option for a lot of people, not necessarily for everyone. Do you think opportunities in HR are going to get more and more exciting and therefore attract better talent into the function?
Yeah, I think, the quality of HR folks will possibly improve over a period of time. Because if I've looked at the last 15 years or 20 years, 15 years, I don't want to be a little harsh or whatever, but a lot of HR guys got into HR because they found it to be the easiest of the MBA exams and easiest of the possible alternatives that they had. And they thought, if I can connect with people and talk well, I can become a good HR guy, so their intrinsic ability to handle some of the requirements of the role were really not there. So I think as things become more complex and therefore more exciting, I think the HR talent will also become, more, not only more adventurous, I think they will become, they will be able to handle greater complexity. They will be more intelligent guys getting into the role.
Right.
And I think that's good for the profession. I think so that augurs well in a sense.
Right. Right.
And I think also that the number of roles within HR will shrink.
Correct.
In organizations. Therefore, I think it's a good thing that you have lesser but a better quality of folks around, having more guys but lesser impact in a sense.
Right. No, and do you see that there will be a lot of HR professionals, and I have seen it. I'm sure you've seen it in many different industries you worked in. A lot of HR people have been generalists, and they don't, if you really dive deep and say that, okay, what is the specific skill or capability this person gets to the table, it's very difficult to find something, because they are almost everybody is a generalist. So on that account, are you seeing any shifts happening, that more specialists and all? A lot of people have been talking about it, but even in HR, are you seeing that?
Not really too much, I think, because today there is a shortage of specialists even within HR.
Right.
And maybe, given the different verticals within HR, a majority seem to get into staffing and as a specialization, and then maybe comp and ben, performance management, and employee relations kind of stuff. But even today, for example, if you look into looking at role design, organization design, structures and all of that, they would go to a BCG or a McKinsey or somebody else, and not look at a HR guy to be able to look at some of those kind of things, So I think I don't see too much. I see a fair amount of technology adaptation happening, maybe selectively, but it's at least started and things like that. But I think again there will be the change that I see is that a lot of generalists will have to become specialists, at least in one area.
Right.
And really know that particular subject, and what Howard Gardner calls the disciplinary mind, master of many schools of thought, but one professional craft also that he must be damn good at kind of stuff. So the ability to look at different ways of thinking or different perspectives, but bring it to a fruition to offer something, So I think that's what the generalists will have to move. And that's going, and the contextual and all of that we spoke about. So it's going to be a tougher role for generalists than what it was earlier. But the specialists will also need to shift from being service providers to proactive options givers of solutions or whatever, given what they have at the back end kind of stuff, and make that transition. So yes, but what might happen is that a lot of these COE types could come from gig workers or from super specialists anywhere in the world kind of stuff. So I think again the challenge therefore comes back to the HR BP kind of role, to be able to understand, to be able to get all of what he can. So today he has the greatest option of getting solutions from anywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
But then he needs to know what do I do with them, where is it available, and how can I use it for solving problems in my area. That's what I would feel.
But I think that point you make, Vijay, about the whole orientation to solutioning rather than being reactive and run a process, I think is easier said than done, as I see it. Because particularly in our profession in HR, it doesn't always come easy to most people. It's a difficult one actually.
Yes, but today what's happening is, again, as a trend, if you see. Companies are getting very large and complex, So the HR BPs, so they are getting divided into different parts, if I might say. So a company is actually 20 small companies or 50 small companies. And each of these has its own HR business partner who is more embedded into the business than into the center in a sense, you know. And therefore, his performance, his delivery is more to his business rather than a functional, you know, compliance, if I might say. And therefore, I think it will put greater pressure on him or her to be able to actually get these kind of, you know, skills and make that transition, which you found, which you said is difficult. But then so today when I'm a little away from the center and I don't get as much support from the center, but I still have to do what I have to do. And it is geographically spread and all of that. So I think that some of these factors might help hasten that process a little bit of their acquiring these kind of skills.
Interesting. So, you know, last question in this conversation, Vijay. So, you know, one of the challenges for a lot of mid-career HR people, you know, see the younger people are seeing the world in a way for the first time, and they will perhaps adapt much more quickly. The mid-career ones have, you know, lived their life for the last, let's say 10, 15, 17 years in a particular way. And now the rest of their career requires a, you know, almost like a, if not a tectonic shift, then certainly very close to it from whatever we are seeing around us, right? What are 2-3 pieces of advice you would give to somebody? And you know, you've talked about several things, but you know, if you were to almost mentor somebody and say, here are the 3 specific things you should focus on, what would that advice be?
I think you've spoken about it in your book too, if I remember right, in your recent book about the muddle kind of thing. I mean, in some way, I'm not. So one of the things I would say is to, you know, first step back to understand what exactly are you supposed to be delivering? What is your role? What is it that you might, that outcomes, and define it in terms of outcomes and not in terms of processes that you have to implement, you know. I think spend some time. And to be able to do that, I think you would probably need to be on the ground in terms of understanding the business and go around to the marketplace and understand how you sell, what is the whatever value that you give to your customers in whatever industry it is. So I think therefore spending some time in understanding the business, understanding therefore the people requirements of that particular business, not coming from any given, you know, paradigms or given processes or whatever, but fresh in terms of saying, if this is my little kingdom, if I might say, you know, what do the people in this kingdom need to be or need to have or whatever. So first I would say is that. The second, I think, would be the ability to therefore quickly, the learning agility piece, you know, to be able to say that, okay, how do I quickly acquire some of these things which I therefore need to possibly learn? It could be skills, it could be certain knowledge, whatever else, and things like that to be. And the third, like we spoke about earlier, is to provide solutions, not processes, to the business leaders. And people, and you are the people expert. So can I provide people solutions and not look at it as a attrition problem, for example, and therefore attack it, say, how do I improve retention? Move it, you know, into a broader framework to say that what does this business require? Do I really need to retain some of these characters, or can I bring about some different thinking? So I think the skill of advocacy and influence, I think they'll have to gain a little more than we've been coming at it from one end. I think we'll have to come at it from a slightly different end. Able to advocate our different perspectives and and influence the way things are done in that little kingdom of mine, in a sense.
Right. No, great, Vijay, some great points. And, while you made, specific points around HR talent, but I think a lot of this is actually applicable to all professionals, and all kinds of talent, actually. It's not limited to HR talent in that sense. That's where we started. But, I think all of these points will be very, very valuable to our listeners. So thank you for this conversations. As usual, lovely having a chat with you. And I'm sure we'll pick up some of these things in due course of time.
Sure. There's just one thing I want to add before we move on, is that in addition to all what we spoke about, I think since we are HR professionals, that connect, that empathy, that sensitivity, and that advocacy for people,
right,
I think is something also that needs to be there on top of everything else that we do. Yeah. That's it.
That's a great point, because in any case, post-pandemic or during the pandemic now, people are talking a lot more about the softer aspects of organizations and leadership.
Yes.
And I think HR can, as you rightly point out, play a very, very critical role in, being partly a role model, but also driving that in organizations. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. Yeah. So thank you, Vijay. And thanks listeners for listening in. I hope you've picked up some, nuggets of wisdom and nuggets of experience and some conceptual frameworks to go and try out in your own place. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vibha. Lovely talking to you.